And this is continuing from the previous video on Daf 42 Omadai. Moon's waxing. So just say that again. The blessing of the we should say them both. The blessing of the true judge when the moon is waning, and the blessing of who is good and who does good when the moon is waxing. Ravina answered him, since this is its nature, we do not bless the moon. The waxing and waning of the moon is not an unexpected occurrence that requires these blessings. The Ravina said the opposite, we don't bless. And Rabbi Ahaba Hanina says that Ravasi says that Rabbi Yochanan says, with regard to anyone who blesses the new month in its proper time, is as if he greets the face of the divine presence. The interpretations of these statements, the Mechilta of Rabbi Yishmael explains that when the Jewish people raise their eyes towards the moon, they align their hearts with the heavens. Alternatively, the renewal of the moon is a paradigm of the creation and renewal of the world, by Jonathan of Linnell. The Marshal explains that the blessing mentioned in the future renewal of the Jewish people at Messianic times, whereupon they will greet the divine presence. Learn to this, it is written concerning the sanctification of the new month. This month shall be for you the beginning of months. Exodus 12:2. It is written there where the Jewish people encountered the divine presence at the splitting of the sea. This is my God, I will glorify him. Exodus 15:2. The term this is employed in both verses. The school of Rabbi Yishmael taught, if the Jewish people merited to greet the face of their Father in heaven only one time each and every month, it would suffice for them. Since the blessing of the moon, there is an aspect of greeting the divine presence. Rabbi said, therefore we will say the blessing while standing in honor of the divine presence. One should recite the blessing of the new moon while standing, as reciting this blessing is testament to greeting the divine presence in accordance with statements of Rabbi Yochanan and Abaye. That's from the Rambam Sefer Hababuchot 10:17, Shulchan Aruch Chaim 426:2. The Gemara relates, Mayama and Mazuta would lean on one another's shoulders. Some explain that their attendants would carry them on their shoulders, or that their attendants would support them with their shoulders because they were old and weak. Rabbi Jonathan of Linnell. Others explain that each one rests his hand on the shoulder of the other as a sign of honor. Not Hama'or. The Meiri explains that they would leap 3 times out of joy. This serves as a source for the custom to rise upon the terms after reciting this blessing. On the side of the blessing, Aha said to Ravashi, in the west, Eretz Yisrael, they recite the blessing on the moon. Blessed is he who renews the months. Rav Asi said to him, all women also recite that blessing, meaning that it's a abridged version for the unlettered. Women do not recite the blessing over the moon. That's from the Magen Avraham or Chaim 426:2. Rather, the full version of the blessing is the version of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who by his word created the heavens. The text of the blessing of the new moon is in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. The custom today is to recite several verses in addition to the blessing. Sefer Hara Hilchot Berocha 10:16, Shulchan Aruch Chaim 426:1. And by the breath of his mouth all their hosts, he set for them a law and a time, that they should not deviate from the task. As they are joyous and glad to perform the will of their owner, they are workers of truth, whose work is truth. And to the moon he said that it should renew itself as a crown of beauty for those he carried from the womb. What does this mean? Musei Rotten. There is an explanation that this appellation of the Jewish people alludes to the fact that they perform mitzvot immediately after leaving the womb, and they serve circumcision and the redemption of the firstborn male of Ben Yonatan Linnell, as it doesn't to be renewed like it, and they praise the Creator for the name of his glorious kingdom. Blessed are you, the Lord, who renews the months. The Gemara presents another statement. Citing Rabbi Aha, citing Rabbi Asi, citing Rabbi Yochanan. The verse states, for by wise advice you shall make war, Proverbs 24:6. Rabbi Ahaba Hanina says that Rabbi Asi says that Rabbi Yochanan says, in whom do you find the war? The ability to engage in disputes of Torah? In one who has in his possession bundles, i.e. vast knowledge of Mishnah. One must first learn the primary source before engaging in disputes of Torah. Rav Yosef would read, considering himself, the verse, and much produce comes by the strength of the ox. In Proverbs 14:14, what does this mean? Rav Yosef's citation of this verse should be understood as follows. Since he is named Yosef, and considering the biblical Joseph, the verse states, the first thing of his ox herd, majesty is his. Deuteronomy 33:17. And additionally, the Torah is compared to produce, specifically bread, as in the verse, come, eat my bread. Proverbs 9:5. Therefore, the one compared to an ox will succeed in all the disputes of Torah. Rabbi Hananel. One with strength can bring a large yield. Rav Yosef was known to be particularly well versed in Tanaic statements. The Mishnah teaches that if one witness says that the event occurred at 2 hours, i.e. the second hour of the day from sunrise, and one witness says that the event occurred at 3 hours, the testimony stands. Shimi Bar Asi says, this was taught only when there was hours, but if one witness says that the event occurred before the sunrise, one says that the event occurred after sunrise, although the sage understood that witnesses may earn an estimation of time the event occurred, if one witness testified that it occurred before sunrise, and another witness testified it occurred during or after the sunrise, the testimonies are not congruent. The same will apply with regard to sunset. I'm going to say for Shoftim Hilchot Edut 2:5. Their testimony is void. Although this may be a smaller discrepancy in terms of time, it's between before and after sunrise cannot be ascribed to an error. The Gemara asks, isn't this obvious? There's a clear difference between darkness and light. Rather, Rav Shimi Bar Asi said as follows. If one witness says that the event occurred before the sunrise, and one says that the event occurred during the sunrise, the testimony is void. The Gemara asks, isn't this also obvious? The Gemara answers, lest you say that this one who says during the sunrise, I was standing in a exposed place and saw a mere shine, and thought he saw the sunrise. Rav Shimi Bar Asi teaches us the court does not assume this occurred and deems the testimony incongruent. The Mishnah teaches, and afterward they bring in the second witness and examine him. Later the Mishnah states, but if one of the students said, I can teach a reason to acquit him, they raise him a seat of the court and seat him among them, and he would not descend from there all day. The Gemara asks, that day no more? But isn't it taught in the Bible in Tosefta 9:3, if the statement of the student has substance, you would never descend from there. What does this mean? Someone explained you would never descend from there as long as they were discussing a case, in the hearing. A student who presents an argument to acquit the defendant in the case of capital law is elevated to Sanhedrin, and if the judges decide his statement has substance, he never descends from there. Rambam say for sure in Hilchot Sanhedrin 10:8, and the statement demonstrated he is capable of deliberating with the other judges. But if the statement of that student does not have substance, he would not descend from there the entire day, in order that his ascent should not be a decent form, i.e. to avoid a humiliating. Abai said, interpret the Mishnah with regard to a case when the statement of that student does not have substance. The Mishnah teaches that if the court found it fit to acquit the defendant during the deliberations, as all or the majority of them agree to acquit him, they excuse him. The Mishnah further teaches that the judges will not drink wine all day. The Gemara asks, what does it mean they do not drink wine? Rabbi Abba Hanina says that it is because the verse states, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes, to say, wear a strong drink. Proverbs 31:4. Rabbi Abba Hanina explains, the director of those who deal with the secret of the world, but rather shall know them, such as stringent matters, do not become drunk. The Mishnah teaches, if the court found it fit to acquit him during the deliberations, as all or a majority of them agree to acquit him, they release him. If it was further taught in the Mishnah that when the court cannot arrive at a verdict, they add judges in pairs of 2 and deliberate until there's a clear verdict. If they added the maximum number of judges and still cannot reach a clear verdict, they discuss the matter until one of those who deems him liable sees the validity of the statement of those who acquit and changes the position of the Gemara. If the judges do not change their position, as they do not see the validity of the position of those who acquit him, what is done? Rabbi Aha says they release him, as he was not found liable. And likewise, Rabbi Yochanan says they release him. Rav Papa said to Abaye, but if they ultimately release him if the court is deadlocked, why do they attempt to convince each other at all when they should release him from the outset? Abaye said to him, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said. The reason is that they should not leave the court confounded without reaching some definite conclusion, as this would tarnish the reputation of the court. Some say that this is what Rav Papa said to Abaye, but why do I need them to add judges at all when they should release him from the first court? Once the first court did not find him liable, they should release him. Why add judges? Abaye said to him, Rabbi Yossi holds in accordance with your opinion, as it is told in a Braita that Rabbi Yossi says, just as the court does not add judges to a court of 71, so too the court does not add judges to a court of 23. If the court of 23 cannot arrive at a verdict, they release him. The sages taught in the cases of monetary law. One says the judgment has grown aged, i.e. this matter is very difficult and requires scrutiny, but in cases of capital law, one does not say the judgment has grown aged. The Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the judgment has grown aged? If we say that the intention is the judgment has aged, the Gemara explains, in the case of money, the court must continue to deliberate until they reach a decision as to whom the money in question belongs. In case of capital, the court should acquit the accused if they cannot reach a decision in time. Sanhedrin explained that this phrase means that the court has determined that they reach an impasse and there is no reason to continue deliberating. I.e. taken an extended amount of time but requires additional deliberations. If so, you should say the reverse, as it is more critical to extend deliberations in case of capital law than in case of money law. Rav Huna Bar Manoah said in the name of Rav Aha, son of Avika, reverse the statement and say that in case of money law, one does not say the judgment has grown aged. In case of capital law, one does say it. Rashi said actually do not reverse it. And what does it mean the judgment has grown aged? It means that the judgment has grown wise. What does that mean? Chachamdina, the Rama explains that in case of monetary law, the court can vote on a verdict as soon as they believe that they've reached a proper conclusion. While in case of capital law, even after they believe the defendant is liable, they must continue deliberation to attempt to find grounds to acquit him, said the Rama. The Gemara explains the objection. Granted, if you say this means the judgment is grown wise, this would be why the Bible states that the greater judge says this statement, as arriving at a verdict is an honor for the court, and consequently the greater the court should be the one to announce it. But if you say this means the judgment has aged, is it not enough that the greatest among the judges in particular not say so? Must he himself by stating that they cannot reach a verdict? The Gemara answers, yes, the greater judges must also announce that the court cannot reach a verdict. Being shamed by oneself is not comparable to being shamed by others. Therefore, it's preferable that the greatest of the judges state this conclusion, rather than having one of the more junior judges state it. Some say that they raise an objection to the second explanation. Granted, if you say this means the judgment has aged, this would be the reason the greatest one states it, because being shamed by oneself is not comparable to being shamed by others. But if you say this means the judgment has grown wise, should the greatest judge praise himself? But isn't it written that another man praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips, in Proverbs 27:2? The Gemara answers, a matter of the court is different, as its administration is a comment upon the greatest judge. And within it in a mission in 29a, when they finished deliberating the matter, they would bring it to the litigants. We would say so and so you're exempt from paying, or so and so you're liable to pay. And now we've just finished chapter 5, and I'm just going to say a quick summary written down here. The examination of the witnesses includes 3 types of questions: interrogation, inquiries, and examination. There's 7 interrogations which concern the time and place the event supposedly occurred. The inquiries, a classification coined by the Meiri, address the essential details of the transgression, the identity of the accused, and a general description of the act. Both of these types of questions are essential to the testimony, and the inability to answer any of these questions renders the testimony void. A third type of questions are examinations, which concern the details of the act, whether concerning the act of transgression itself or the location in which it took place. If a witness claimed to be ignorant of the answer to one of the examination questions, his testimony is not void, although this may raise the suspicion of the judges. If there's an inconsistency between the answers of the witnesses to these examinations, the testimony is incongruent and rendered void. While ignorance and certainly a contradiction with regard to interrogation renders the testimony void, it's possible that certain apparent contradictions can be ascribed to human error, which will not invalidate the testimony. For example, it's possible that the witnesses were concerning which day of the month the event occurred, or concerning the precise time it occurred. The second possibility is especially relevant when one considers the accurate timepieces were uncommon in those days. This chapter sets the limits within which an inconsistency is considered to be an acceptable error. The Mishnah in this chapter contains the essential guide with regard to how the court arrives at a verdict in cases of capital law. A simple majority of one is not sufficient to deem the accused liable. Moreover, if any of the judges refuse to state his position, a verdict cannot be announced, as a minimum of 23 judges must issue the verdict in cases of capital law. Consequently, there were times when it became necessary to add judges to the court. The Mishnah and the Gemara describe the manner in which this was done. That there was an upper limit of 71 judges. If they nevertheless cannot arrive at a verdict in case of capital law until they acquit the defendant, and in case of manslaughter, they continue deliberating until they reach conclusion. Now we're going to start chapter 6. So just give an introduction. The previous chapter discussed the judicial structure and legal procedures relating to capital cases. This chapter turns the discussion to issues relating to the execution of those found to have transgressed prohibitions that carry court-imposed capital punishment. But before carrying out its verdict, the court must take every possible precaution to prevent any miscarriage of justice. It must consider the distant possibility that perhaps some argument in the guilty party's favor will be raised even in the final moments of his life. This chapter gives special attention to these precautionary measures. The execution of a transgressor who was convicted of a capital offense is not only a practical means of eradicating evil from the world. Judicial execution is a mitzvah by Torah law and is governed by many detailed halachot. The principles as well as the details will be clarified. Where is the convicted transgressor executed? How was he put to death? And which people are duty bound to administer the punishment? How is he buried? And how is one to relate to his relatives? Judicial execution, being a mitzvah by Torah law, has significance not only for the betterment of society, but for the transgressor himself to be atonement for his sins. When the transgressor was sentenced to receive the death penalty, his execution he merits full atonement for his sins. His confession prior to his execution was not a safety measure to ensure that he was properly sentenced, rather it is part of the atonement process that he must undergo in order to purify himself. The nation as a whole, who is also tarnished by the sins of individual members, and they cannot reach atonement until the guilty are justly punished. Torah's mitzvot include mitzvot that are, metaphorically speaking, black as a raven, i.e. unpleasant. Nevertheless, they count among the other mitzvot, and they are valuable and important in their own right. These mitzvot must be clarified in the most meticulous manner and fulfilled with the purest of intentions. The great principle of loving your neighbour as yourself is to apply even when that neighbour is being taken out for execution. Then, too, one must be concerned to the extent possible about his good and his welfare. So, Amud B, let's go. When the trial has ended, the connection between this chapter and the previous one is explained in several ways. Some suggest that since the previous chapter discussed the interrogation of the witnesses who testify against one accused of idol worship, this chapter begins with the punishment imposed upon an idol worship, which is stoning. The Ramah also proposes that death by stoning is discussed first, because according to most opinions, it is the most severe of execution, because the halach connected are the most numerous. Or because most capital offenders are liable to be stoned, says the Ran. Alternatively, stoning is discussed first because a special platform had to be built for that mode of execution, whereas the other modes of execution did not require any special preparation, says the Ran. In the guilty verdict, and the condemned man has been sentenced to be stoned, he is taken out to be stoned. It's seen. Was sentenced to death by stoning, he was taken out to the place of stoning. One man was standing at the entrance to the court with cloth in his hand. Another man was sit on a horse at a distance from him. If an argument is found in favour of a condemned man, the man standing at the entrance of the courtyard would wave the close, and the man mounted on the horse would race off to delay the execution until the matter was clarified. I stated in the mission of Sefer Shoftim, 112.3. The place of stoning was outside the court. It was located outside the court and some distance from it. According to the Rabbi, it was located about 6 miles from the court, as it was in the days of Moses. Rabbi Sefer Shoftim, Sanhedrin Daf 13:1, and this beyond it, and as it states with regard to blasphemer, take him who has cursed us. Take him who has cursed to outside the camp, and let all that heard him lay their hands upon his head, and let all the congregation stone him. Verse 24:14. One man stands at the entrance of the court with cloth. Sudarin. Sudar is a cloth from the Greek. Sudarian, or the Latin sudarium, meaning kerchief or towel, in his hand, and another man sits on a horse at a distance from him, but where he can still see him. If one of the judges says, I can teach a reason to acquit him, the other man with the cloth waves the cloth as a signal, and the horse races off after the court agents who are leading the condemned man to the execution, and he stops them, and they weigh into the court, determines whether or not the argument has substance. And if he, the condemned man himself, says, I teach a reason to acquit him, he's returned to the court even 4 or 5 times, provided that there's no substance to it, the Gemara asks. And what was the place of stoning just outside the court? In Jewish Talmud, it is explained that when a Mishnah says a place of stoning was outside the court, it is referring to a case where the condemned man was found guilty of idol worship, in which case he's put to death at the gate of the court. And nothing more. Does it suffice that the place of execution is only a short distance from the court and no further? But isn't it told in the Braita the place of stoning was outside the distance that is equivalent to the length of 3 camps in the wilderness? Shlosh Machanos, or 3 camps, various halachot are derived from the total account of the activities of the Jews in the wilderness. Discussion of these topics use terms appropriate for the situation in the era, despite the fact that they are no longer relevant to the later period. The 3 camps in the wilderness had their parallels in the later period. The camp of the Divine Presence, which was the area within the court of the tent of meeting, corresponded to the temple and its courtyard inside the Chano gate. The camp of the Levites, which was the area where the Levites encamped around the tabernacle, corresponded to the Temple Mount as far as the Chano gate. The camp of Israel corresponded to Jerusalem outside the Temple Mount, and according to many authorities, all walled cities in Eretz Yisrael. The first image depicts the 3 camps during the Jewish people's travels in the wilderness. In the center is the tabernacle, the camp of the Divine Presence, immediately surrounding the camp of the Levites, and the outermost camp is the camp of Israel. In Jerusalem there were 3 corresponding camps, and the temple with its courtyard and the Temple Mount and the rest of the city. The distance of the wilderness outside of the 3 camps corresponds to a place outside city walls and limits. The Gemara answers, yes, as it is as he said, that the place of stoning is outside the 3 camps, and the practical difference from the fact that Mishnah teaches halacha in this manner is that if it happened that the court went out to read outside the 3 camps, even then the place of the stoning is set up as it is from the court and not immediately adjacent to it, and the court should not appear to be the court of killers. Certainly, the reason the place of stoning must be distant from the court is so that the condemned man might have a chance to be saved, i.e., so that the time it takes for him to be taken from the court to the place of stoning, someone divides the time in his favour. The last. From where is the master derived the stoning carried outside on 3 camps? And the sage told him about with regard to the verse, take out him who has kissed outside the camp. 24:48. This means outside 3 camps, i.e., even outside the camp of the Israelite. Do you say that he is taken outside the 3 camps, or perhaps he is taken outside only 1 camp? Proof is brought that he must be taken outside the 3 camps. Saying that the condemned man is taken outside the camp, as states with regard to the bulls, but the sin offerings that are burnt. And this offering, there were 2 kinds of sin offerings: outer sin offerings and inner sin offerings. Outer sin is brought by an individual who is unwitting by anything or prohibition that carries the punishment of code. had he violated it intentionally. The bloody offering is sprinkled on the corner of the altar, on the outer altar, and its fats and sacrificial portions are burned on the altar. The main of flesh is eaten by male priests. Innocent offerings are bought by the community or high priest for following a mistaken halakha ruling. These offerings are bulls, and the blood is sprinkled toward the curtain of the Holy of Holies and on the golden altar located inside the sanctuary. Their organs are burned on the altar located outside the sanctuary, but their flesh, hide, and innards are burned when outside the camp. The bull and goats sacrificed on Yom Kippur are also considered innocent offerings. They must be burned outside the camp of Leviticus 4:12, just as there was bought as sin offerings are burned when outside the three camps. So too here, the condemned is taken outside the three camps. The Gemara asks, and there with regard to the bulls bought as sin offerings that are burned, from where do you derive that they must be burned when they are outside all three camps? As the sage taught in Bryson, it is stated about the bull brought as a sin offering of the high priest. Even the whole bull he shall carry outside the camp unto a clean place where the ashes are poured out and burn it. Leviticus 4:12. Meaning, you to take it outside the three camps. Do you say that he takes it outside the three camps, or are you required to take it outside only one camp? When the verse states with regard to the bull brought as a sin offering, he shall carry the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. Leviticus 4:21. He requires explanation, as there is no need for the verse to state outside the camp, since it's already stated at the end of the same verse, and burn it as he burned the first bull, which indicates that all the halachot of the bull brought as a sin offering of the high priest apply to the bull brought as a communal sin offering. What does the verse mean when it states outside the camp? To give it a second camp, i.e. it indicates that it must be removed not only from the camp of divine presence into the temple, but also from the Levite camp corresponding to the Temple Mount. And when another verse states with regard to removal of the ash, and he shall put off his garments and put on other garments and carry forth the ashes outside the camp to a clean place, in Leviticus 6:4, that verse also requires explanation. There's no need for the verse to state this, since it is already stated with regard to the bull brought as sin offering of a high priest. Even the whole bull he shall carry outside the camp to a clean place, where the ashes are poured out, and burn it on wood with fire. When ashes are poured out, it should be burned. In Leviticus 4:12. The repetition of outside the camp indicates it's required to give it a third camp. Teaching that it is burned when outside the Israelite camp corresponds to the land outside Jerusalem's walls. The Gemara challenges the derivation of the halacha governing one who is sentenced to be stoned from the halacha governing the burning of bulls brought as sin offerings. Perhaps the place of stoning should be learned from the halacha governing offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, about which the verse also uses the expression outside the camp. In Leviticus 17, just as there with regard to offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, these words mean outside only one camp. The common divine pinnacle went to the temple, as the next verse states, and he did not bring it to the door of the tent of meeting. In Leviticus 17:4. The camp of divine presence. So to here, the condemned should be stoned outside one camp. It says, for three reasons it is reasonable to derive the halacha governing one who is sentenced to be stoned from the halacha governing bulls brought as sin offerings that are burned. The Gemara explains, as with regard to the man to be stoned for blasphemy, it says, take out Hosea, him who has cursed to outside the camp, which is similar to what is stated about the sin bull offerings. Even the whole bull shall he carry, Bahotzi, outside the temple. Immediately says outside the camp. And seen both in the case of stoning and in the case of the bulls brought as sin offerings, going outside the camp renders the act fit. Machshir. Various explanations have been proposed as to the meaning of the term machshir, rendering fit in this context. Some suggest that the bull brought as sin offering renders the high priest able to perform the temple service, and similarly stoning makes the condemned man's repentance acceptable. Alternatively, the high priest must lay his hands on the head of the bull sin offering, and similarly the witnesses must lay their hands on the head of the condemned man, as the blasphemer may not be stoned and the bulls may not be burned inside the camp, in contrast to the case of offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, where slaughtering them outside the camp renders the act forbidden. And additionally, both in the case of stoning and the case of the bulls brought as sin offerings, being outside the camp achieved atonement, as both capital punishment and sin offerings atone for sin. The Gemara rejects this reasoning. On the contrary, the halacha governing one who is sentenced to be stoned should be derived from the halacha governing offerings slaughtered outside the temple court for 4 reasons. Gemara explains the 4 reasons. As in both cases, it is a person who is outside, either the one who is taken outside for stoning or the one who slaughters the offering outside the temple courtyard, whereas in the case of blood bought as sin offerings, it is the bulls that are carried outside the camp. Additionally, in both the blasphemer and the one who slaughters the offerings outside the temple courtyard have committed a sin, while the bull is not. Additionally, both the blasphemer and the one who slaughters the offerings outside the temple courtyard pay with their souls, as slaughtering an offering outside the temple is punishable with karet. And lastly, both in the case of the blasphemer and in the case of offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, the halacha disqualification offering that was sacrificed with the intent to consume it after designated time and pickle is not applicable, whereas this halacha is applicable to blood bought as sin offering for pickle. Pickle is an improper intention. Proper intent can render an offering disqualified, whether one is offering an animal, a bird, or a meat offering. If one engaged in the 4 indispensable rites of the sacrifice and offering, the priest expresses the intention to sprinkle the blood of the offering, burn its fats on the altar, or partake of it after the appropriate time. This intention disqualifies the offering due to his improper intention. An offering that is disqualified due to a priest's improper intention may not be sacrificed, and while one bringing it has not fulfilled his obligation. Anyone willfully eating from an offering of this kind is liable to receive the punishment of karet. The sage also decreed that this offering imparts ritual impurity. It is the intention of the priest sacrificing the offering, not that of one bringing it, that determines whether or not the offering becomes disqualified by improper intention. So it's the priest's intention, not the individual bringing it. That's interesting. The Gemara explains, nevertheless, the Brisa prefers to compare one case requiring going outside the camp to render an act fit, and another case requiring going outside the camp to render an act fit, rather than comparing one case requiring going outside the camp to render the act fit, and another case of going outside the camp that renders the act forbidden. This is the most notable of factors mentioned. Rav Papa said, the matter of the location of the place of stoning can be derived from the verse themselves. Where was Moses sitting? Was this in Moshe Hecha Havayasev? Rav Papa had to say this because one might have thought that Moses was in the meeting at that time, and that it was there that he issued his ruling. The verse indicates that the blasphemer himself was also present, and since he could not have been left imprisoned in the tent of meeting, the entire episode must have occurred in the Levite camp, the matter of blasphemer was brought before him. In the Levite camp, Adi was a Levite, and it was there that the blasphemer was brought to trial. And the Most One said to Moses, take out him who has cursed outside the camp, indicating that he should be taken out of the Levite camp into the Israelite camp. And later it says, and Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and they brought him that had cursed out of the camp, and they stoned him with a stone. And the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses in Leviticus 24:23, teaching they were taken outside the Israelite camp as well. The Gemara raises an objection. This additional verse is necessary to teach us about the implementation of God's instructions, and that the Jewish people did in fact carry out God's command, but this verse should not be understood as referring to an additional camp. The Gemara answers the implementation of God's instructions is written explicitly as it stated in the continuation of the verse. And that's start the next daf. Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. So I hope this made sense. And I wish you a very good day, very good night whenever you're hearing this. If you have any comments or questions, any tips for improvement, please let me know. And have a great day. All the best.